Here.
Commissioner Lilly. Commissioner Eckel. Here. Commissioner Mark.
Here.
Mayor Lynch. Here.
Here.
I'll call you later, Dan.
That's what happens to you.
So we have the approval of minutes from June 23rd.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have motion and a second. Is there any discussion, changes? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have the payment of claims.
Madam President, I believe there is a change proposed by Clerk Treasurer Rivas for the allocation area fund docket. I believe it's been dropped in Dropbox. However, Clerk Treasurer Rivas is here if you have any questions about the dockets that are included in this month's meeting packet.
You want to tell us, Nina, please?
So there's an addition of 4 claims to the allocation area. They total $98,704.29, and they are all in non-reimbursable claims. We had just gotten a couple of them in, so Sonny and I worked together to get them wrapped up on this docket, so she can submit the reimbursement. If that's okay. So the total allocation area docket is $458,241.17.
Thank you.
Sorry, Nina, I'm trying to bring you up.
We will need a motion to approve the claims.
I'll make a motion to approve the claims.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have staff reports.
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioners. A brief update on projects that we continue to work on your behalf. The Marquette Greenway Trail, the park segment or the trail segment at Salt Creek, work continues. Gary Up, the contractor on the job, will begin earthwork next week. A substantial completion for that project is set for November 5th of this year. The Willow Creek Road, Chrisman Road Bypass Project, paving and concrete work is complete. Structure adjustments and general restoration work is ongoing, with substantial completion expected mid-August of this year. We continue to work on closeout documents for the demolition and remediation of or monitoring of 5439 Central Avenue, the former Gilbert gas station. Central Avenue West, Phase 1, the design work is complete. Bid letting is expected for fall of this year. Phase 1B design work is ongoing, and bid letting for that phase is expected in fiscal year 2024. The 2022 paving program, Reeve Riley has been awarded that project and recently completed paving work on Plaza, Houston, Lakewood, Venus Court, Christie, Tilford, Russell, and Sherwin. Sandy continues to work with them on the next round of projects, so that work continues and is ongoing. City Hall remodel, the contractor's continuing to work on punch list items. There's a meeting scheduled for Monday, August 1st, to review those punch list items so that we can put this project behind us. Founders Square Plaza, we're continuing to work on punch list items with the contractor, and similar to the City Hall remodel project, I'd like to put that project behind us as well. Projects related to the downtown baseball complex, Lazaro recently installed the 4 new man doors at the complex, 3 at the concession restroom building and 1 at the storage building. Fire station number 3, the masonry work at the station house. Gary Up is continuing work, and they were out there today working off the lift at the north side of the building. Founders Square Plaza and the police station landscape project, that work is continuing. The Library Irving Street Trail project, Marsh did submit 99% plans for review yesterday, July 27th, and if all is in order, we'll release for bidding immediately, with hopes of having a bid letting in September of this year. We'll try to go sooner if we can, Mayor, on that project.
AJ, that's the trail? Is it also the outdoor library?
It's the library project. There's a portion of the trail project that would be included in those bid documents as well. The Hannah's Hope playground resurface, as I reported last month, the contractor's been notified, and Joe Eberts in the office is continuing to communicate with the contractor on securing all necessary licensing so that work can begin. Earlier this week on Tuesday, Smith Group, consultants to the downtown master plan project, were here conducting stakeholder interviews and a site tour. Please note on your calendars that the charrette for the project is scheduled for Tuesday, August 16th through Thursday, August 18th. And when that detailed schedule is finalized, I will make sure that each of you have a copy of that. The Transit Development District TDD boundary. Last month I reported that the second public hearing was going to be held in July. That meeting was not held in July and canceled and rescheduled for August 11th. So the second hearing for the Transit Development District boundary is set for Thursday, August 11th. I believe the meeting starts at 10:30 at the offices of the RDA in Crown Point, Indiana. Another project that we continue to work on your behalf is the Marquette Greenway Trail. These are the remaining segments in the city of Portage, and we're providing a local match as Redevelopment Commission, but these are the awarded funds that the Northwest Indiana received from the Raise and Ready grant programs, so that federal program, as well as the state program. We held that meeting last Friday. During the kickoff meeting, we talked about the project in total, the status of where we stand with the project, and then next steps. We were notified during the call, or those in attendance, that interlocal agreements will soon be submitted to the jurisdictions for both the RAISE grant as well as the READY grant. So we will be keeping our eye out for both of those interlocal agreements. That concludes my report at this time. I know that Bill Rathjen has a real estate report, and he's offered to present that under new business when we start talking about the appraisal contracts later on.
How did the stakeholders' meetings go?
I believe the stakeholder meetings went well. You know, we spend a lot of time talking about, while we spend some time talking about the built environment, planning, we tend to always get into programming and how great it would be if we did this, we did that. But that's an important part of a designer's thought process, because ultimately you're trying to figure out a built environment that works best for those people that are using the space and what the space could be used for. But I think all the meetings went really well. You know, I think there were some themes that were throughout. I think there's a understanding, at least of that group, that sticking to the plan is going to be very important, because when people talked about what they wanted, they were all very consistent. And I think that we were able to, unfortunately, identify a couple situations where ideas that were even shared 17, 18, 20 years ago were funded, and then decisions were made to push that money in other directions. And you know, when you point those things out to new people that are involved in the process, you get a little frustrated about it. So, but that's okay. It's important to really know the lay of the land when we're talking about future planning, and maybe that'll lead to a little more stick-to-itiveness when the next go-around takes place, so that there's greater buy-in, there's more than 1 or 5 people keeping track of what the plan is, and it becomes really more of a community plan as opposed to a plan of a few that can really easily be readjusted based on whim. So I think we heard a lot about that. We heard a lot about, you know, things like pedestrian friendliness, and then related to that, you know, some concerns about, wow, Central Avenue is pretty big. There's a lot to cross out there. So that was a pretty significant part of the conversation, because, you know, it's so different, right? You look at Central Avenue and it's big and there's 5 lanes and it takes a lot to cross it. And then you go north and it is pedestrian friendly. You got on-street parking, you got large sidewalks, you got businesses pushed up to the rights of way, and it has a completely different feeling. So that was definitely something that folks talked about, especially how to bridge that big divide, especially with all the residential development to the south of Central Avenue. That seemed to be a pretty large theme. Programming seemed to be a really big theme about making sure that folks, when we continue to invest in our downtown, that there's a program offered throughout the year. It definitely resonated, which really goes to, I get that that's a lot of program and ideas for the seasons, but it does get into the built environment and how we have to take care of the built environment when those programs are in place. Talked a little bit about then future development, about what that would look like, and that really is all really going to come together, you know, when we conduct that charrette in August, and how it's going to look and visualize, and that's the beauty of this process that we're going through, is that it's built right in front of us, as opposed to, you know, the accusation or whatever that there's a secret plan and you just unveiled it. It literally will happen in front of us during those 3 days. So we will have plenty of opportunities to see it, to visualize it, to understand what it takes to get there. And then if we see something along the way, or a little concerned about the path that it will take to get there, this will be the time to talk about that stuff. Hopefully in an open and situation where folks are comfortable to ask questions and be comfortable with the answers they're about to get. I know many of you did participate in those stakeholder interviews, so I appreciate that. I appreciate your time. And I know the consultants do as well, because they did garner and gain a lot of important insights that will help them deliver a better product and charrette when we get into August.
So will all the stakeholders that were in these meetings be invited to the charrettes?
Absolutely. Now with the charrette, the invitation list now gets bigger. This is now more and more people get involved. These are 3 days. There's a lot of further opportunity to engage, to understand what's going on, and a lot of different venues in which to offer your thoughts, you know. We will be using this room, using many of the new spaces here at City Hall for that event. In addition to the stakeholders and this larger invitation list, we'll also be engaging a smaller group of folks as a steering committee to kind of make sure that throughout the process that the consultants are continuing to go in the right direction, and really to report out to the community, to that small group, to say, hey, listen, here's what we're hearing. Okay, so, and this is the direction we as the consultants, our professional experience tells us to go. Yes, Mayor, the stakeholders will be there, a larger group of folks will be there, and if we do well, this will be a very well-attended event during or over those 3 days.
Thank you, Reggie.
You're welcome.
Hey, AJ?
Yes,
For
sir.
the Willow Creek overpass, is it part of the contractor's package to cut back the brush and tree limbs off of the sidewalks, or is that something we have to coordinate?
That will, their project limits really extend to underneath the guardrails. They've filled in with some aggregates and stone. Larger cut back behind those would need to be coordinated with our city services.
So then we should probably wait until they're done with their part and then get the city services in there?
It's probably a good idea. You know, they'll want their maintenance of traffic off the road so that they can stop paying for it. We would probably be better to then set up our own traffic control and then have our folks out there doing the rest of that work.
Maybe we need to give them a heads up if that's coming up soon, so they put that in their
Okay,
planning.
understood.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't believe we have any old business. New business, we have the approval of the police department equipment list.
Yes, Madam President, Commissioners, with us this afternoon is Chief Candiano. And he would like to spend a few minutes with you this afternoon to talk about his proposed equipment list for your consideration.
Awesome. Good evening. I think I know most of you. So I'm not sure of the whole process, how this works. You just want me to go through the different things that we're looking at and kind of explain why we're asking for them? Does that work best for you guys, or?
Well, I think if everybody recalls, the Redevelopment Commission budgeted $75,000 to go to the police station for equipment that they need. So this is what they're coming to us with for that grant money.
Correct.
So I would suggest, yeah, just doing that.
Just go through,
Going it all,
okay.
And then if the members have questions, they can.
Okay. So the first thing that we're asking for is cameras, and basically right now we have cheaper cameras that we use in patrol that are good for, basic investigations and things like that. However, when we get into, major crimes, major scenes, crashes, things like that, we really need better technology cameras that have, higher definition that, obviously take better pictures. So our detective bureau and our crime scene officers, they've been operating with stuff that's fairly old, and they're looking for an upgrade on that. Just like I said, as technology's changed, what we have is not necessarily compatible with the systems and things, and we're needing more detailed ways to document scenes. So, so they're asking for, or what they've requested of me to bring to you is 6 cameras and then the associated accessories with those. So we had initially, we've reached out to a couple different places, and if there's an opportunity, we would like to use the vendor that I have listed here based on the price, the fact that the customer service, we've dealt with them before, is great. They're a local shop, so if there's repairs and things that need to be done, it's much easier to access them. So that's kind of that on the cameras. Do you have any questions on those, or? Okay. The next thing that we're trying to get approval for is a rescue phone. It's called a Rescue Phone Cellular Response Council. So basically right now, if we have a SWAT call out, hostage negotiation scene, anything like that, we essentially don't have any equipment for that. So it would involve basically whatever officer is doing the negotiating would use a cell phone. They would call, they're the only one that can hear the conversation. The other negotiators that are there, and you typically shouldn't be negotiating without 2. It's best to have 4. You've got somebody that's can prompt questions, somebody that can take notes, somebody that can relay to the command staff, and with this type of equipment, essentially we could have multiple people listening. Like I said, right now we've got, it would just be somebody on a cell phone trying to explain what was happening to the people next to them. Obviously not ideal. You don't want to put the person you're negotiating with on hold so that you can communicate to the rest of the group. The other thing about this equipment is that it'll record it, because all this stuff needs to be documented these days, and so obviously makes it a lot easier if it's recorded than trying to go from memory of exactly what was said during the call. So there are a lot more expensive ones out there that come with throw phones, different types of phones in them. And right now we're comfortable with doing this and basically just using we have a couple phones that are assigned to patrol that are, department phones. We're good with using that, hooking into the system, rather than, I couldn't see spending an extra $5,000-$6,000 to have a built-in phone when we can use our cellular technology with that. So that is that item. The next thing we're trying to get are trauma kits. We'd like to get 60 of them. We've got, I think, around 10 of them out there right now. I'd like to have them in almost every car, which 60 would get us about there. So basically this would be carrying types of equipment such as tourniquets, packing gauze, gloves, scissors, chest seals, things like that. I don't think I need to explain to anybody, what's been going on in our country over the last couple of years. More often than not, we're first on scene even before the fire department. It would be great for our officers to have something that they could start treating people with immediately. Through some of the ARPA funds, we were able to get AEDs in the majority of our cars. We've already deployed those, I think, 3 or 4 times since we got them, which just shows how often we arrive on scene first. The other part to this is, depending on what type of a scene you're coming into, I listed in here as a hot zone, essentially. We may not be able to get fire personnel in there immediately. So to have something that the officers could immediately begin using life-saving, equipment on is just huge. So I just got some numbers back on that because I was waiting on numbers. And so essentially, some of the kits that I found out there have stuff that we don't need. So I reached out to Tim Sosby to see, what he thought would be most beneficial for us to use, obviously having the experience with EMS and all that. And so he found us 2 different kits. There is one which is $81, which would come with essentially all the things that we would need. And then for an extra $20, we could get an extra set of combat gauze, which essentially it could be used on more than one, more than one patient. So that would come to $101 each. If we were trying to get 60 of them, that'd be $6,060, or the cheaper version would be $4,860. And I will say there is another kit that's a little cheaper, but this one comes with zippers, a little bit more to manipulate. The two that I mentioned prior to that, my understanding is that they're basically just a one hand. You can operate them with one hand. You have the pull strap and the kit opens, which probably doesn't seem like a big deal unless you're in the middle of a chaotic scene. You may have one hand on a weapon. You may have been injured yourself. You don't have the ability to have two hands. These will also be able to be worn on their person or attached to a headrest, so easily deployable. So again, something that I think is huge for us to have as first responders, because again, like I said, more often than not, we're the first ones on the scene. So, sorry, I got my stuff all over the place here now. The last thing we were trying to obtain are mats. So we are mandated by the state to do a certain amount of physical tactics training each year. Currently, we do the majority of that by video, which essentially meets the mandate, but let's be honest, hands-on training is much better. And we've been really pushing over the last couple of years, de-escalation techniques, less lethal techniques, all these different things, so that some of the things you've seen in the news don't happen. We currently don't have a place to train. We were using some gyms and things, then COVID hit. People became more restrictive on wanting out, agencies and different things in there. They wanted to restrict that to members. We have used the MAC out in Valpo at times. The problem with that is that as that's becoming more and more popular, everybody wants to be out there, so it's very hard to schedule. It's very hard to get our people in. The other caveat to this is that our new officers are required before. So when we hire somebody, if it doesn't line up with the academy, we do as much of the training as needs to be to certify them as an officer, and then they've got X amount of time to go to the academy. So one of the things that they have to do is actual defensive tactics. They can't do that by video. So when we're hiring somebody, we're stuck on a schedule before we can get anybody out to the MAC or wherever we're sending them. We can't really start training them, as an actual officer until we get this requirement fulfilled. So we're already starting to run into some scheduling issues there, and I'm sure that's just going to get worse. And we're hiring, I think we have 12 people leaving in the next 2 years. So this is going to be a huge thing for us. And then the third part of it that I would like to throw in there is we've gotten a lot of requests for, like a defensive tactic type training for the community. I'm losing the term I want to use, but some requests for outreach. Hey, if I was in this situation, what would I do? Is there any type of training? This would give us the opportunity to have a place in-house where we could start doing that. So we actually have a room at the police department that's currently, we could use it for this type of thing. We had it measured out for the mats. I've reached out to some mat companies. The company that I got the latest information from is called Dolomer. And the reason I like this type of mat is because it comes in 28 pieces is what we would need. Rather than a single piece, if you get that down, it's hard to move. It's in there, you're stuck with that. It's, like I said, if it's a cut piece, it's cut for that, and it'd be hard to manipulate. With this, if we had issues, we could take it up if we needed to use part of the space, for something else, or it's easier to clean since you can move it, so that's why we're looking at this type of mat. It's also primarily used in gyms, so it'd be perfect for the type of thing that we need. So the price on that, I had gotten a quote for $4,060. They finally got back to me with the shipping, which is a decent price, but I think it's probably because of the weight of these items. But that's $620, so it'd be $4,680 total for that. So I did not add up the four altogether because I wasn't sure if they'd each be a separate thing, but those are the four items that we're trying to seek approval for.
Is this your complete list?
What's that?
Is this the complete list?
No. This doesn't come anywhere near the $75,000. yeah, I want to say it was under 25 for this, so. But these are things that so essentially, I consider these to be needs more than once, just they weren't needs that we had the budget for. So when the opportunity came to us, these were the first 4 things that, there was a hostage negotiating scene that we helped participate in somewhere else in Porter County, and we realized once we saw the technology that they had, how much of a disadvantage we were at. So that went to the top of my list. The mats, again, because right now we're not able to train anywhere, so we're essentially have put our defensive tactics program on hold. We're watching videos. So that rose to the top of the list. The cameras, the crime scene officers came to me and said, we're dealing with bad technology. Once we get back into the office, we're not seeing the specifics of these scenes. And then, obviously the trauma kits. I mean, that's something we've talked about for years. And we were able to, like I said, get about 10 of them a year or 2 ago. But, just look at the 4th of July incident. I'm certain that those officers were on scene right away. And, if they had that equipment, they were probably treating people immediately. So that jumped to the top of the list. So I wanted to get these, to you as soon as I can, because I considered them to be things that we could really use right away. So there might be some other stuff, or we'll see where we go with that. So I need to evaluate some of our other wants and needs, but I thought that these 4 were a huge priority right now. I actually reached out to AJ last month. I had this pretty much together, but I couldn't get everything I needed in time, so that's why it took another month for me to get before you all. So.
Are there any more questions for Mike? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve finances for the items the police department's requesting.
Second.
Third.
We have a motion and a second and a third. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
There
Thank
go,
you all.
Mike.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
8.2, we have the quote for the electronic message center
Yes,
replacement.
I'd like to invite Sandy McDaniel up for a recommendation.
Good afternoon. I sent out requests for quotes to provide replacement equipment for the sign that is adjacent to the police station on Central Avenue. I received 3 quotes of those that I requested quotes from. Then I received an email from Commissioner Lack of an additional person that we should have sought quotes from. I reached out to them, they provided me with their quote. And so we have a total of 4 quotes. I believe that they were included in your packet. Our lowest quoter is Legacy Sign Group, and their price is $3,004. And I would recommend that we award the project to Legacy Sign Group.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any questions? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Thank you.
We have the value estimate contracts.
Yes, I'd like to invite Bill Rathjen for a recommendation.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I believe everyone has a recap of my letter in their package, do they not? I have extra copies if anybody needs it. If you can recall from the June meeting, we were tasked with putting together some appraisals, packages for 5 land packages. Some of those packages include more than 1 lot. We did solicit 5 commercial appraisal companies. We received bids from 4 of those companies, and they're recapped on that letter. Our recommendation tonight is to award the appraisals to Valuation Services and Vail Appraisal Group. Prices are listed on that letter. Some of those land parcels are owned by other entities in the city, if you recall, and we worked with Mr. Witten to get permission from those entities. That has been granted, from what I understand? Yes. Correct. All right, so tonight I would ask that these be approved and the contracts be signed so we can get the appraisers moving. They will have up to 90 days to get those appraisals. So we would be looking at November for our public offering to be in compliance with the IC 36. We've already worked with Joe. Joe's assisted in putting together all the data that the appraisers will need for the parcels. So we're ready to go upon your approval.
Make a motion to approve. Dan, do you need the review, the contracts?
Actually, I've looked at them, so they look good. But thank you for asking.
Just a simple motion to approve then.
Second.
We have motion and a second. Are there any further questions? And you reviewed all this, Dan? It's all good?
I have, they are.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Bill, for your hard.
Thank you. And Mr. Witten has the signature copies, so whenever those can be signed, I appreciate it. Thank you.
We have the approval of the Founders Square Park lighting improvements.
Yes, before you for consideration this afternoon is a professional services agreement with DLZ for the purposes of preparing plans and specifications for additional pedestrian scale lighting at Founders Square. The total amount of the agreement is $24,500. Attached to the agreement is an illustration of the project limits. This project is informed by a previous study prepared by DLZ that you commissioned a few months ago that studied light levels within the park. So they will be taking that past work, applying that to this project, and we would expect lighting levels to be increased to a standard that is recommended by our designers. Most of the work will take place along the east side of the park, along Circa Way, and lighting improvements around the playground, Hannah's Hope Playground, on the west side of the park. It would be staff's recommendation to approve this letter agreement with the consult of Attorney Witten.
Motion to approve with consult by Attorney Witten.
We have motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried.
Thank you.
We have the banner quotes.
Yes, I believe the memo for the banner program hasn't been included in your packet. This memo comes from Joyce Russell, who's been a big help in moving forward with this banner program along Central Avenue, Main Street, around Founders Square. This is to get ahead of the next round of banners, and you'll see included in her memo is a description of what she's seeking, as well, I believe, and she attached as a banner schedule, a little bit about what our banner program will look like throughout the year, who she is partnering with. Again, this initiative is not only supported by the city, it's also supported by the Chamber of Commerce and Portage Township Schools. I think Joyce has done a great job. It's great to see the banner arms being used, and I believe we've all heard a lot of really positive reviews on the summer banners that are currently out on Central, along Main, and around Founders. It would be staff's recommendation to move forward with Joyce's recommendation.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? AJ, I did have a question. Are these banners, and I should have asked Joyce this, will they get like what I call crunchy over a couple of seasons because of the material they're made out of?
I don't know that for certain, Mayor, considering the material that they are made out of and depending on, sunlight and maintenance of those, I think we should be cognizant that we may need to replace these on a regular basis so that the banner program can stay up and running. You'll recall last year, depending on any number of situations, that a number of the Hometown Heroes banners had to be replaced because different things happened, wind shear, some were just the wrong pole in the wrong place, at least for that banner. So I believe that we should be mindful as we budget in the years to come to have money set aside to support this program. It is this commission many years ago that felt it, we installed lights on Central Avenue, Main, and around Founders that included banner arms, and I think our community, with banner arms up there, I would think the residents would expect it to be banners up there. So, over time, Mayor, I do believe that they will deteriorate, and we just need to be prepared in our budget to make sure that Joyce or whomever takes over the banner program has the resources so that those banners can continue to be rotated along Central, Main, and around Founder Square.
I think one of the things that you and Sandy and Joyce went down to the park department barn, and there were piles of banners down there that were all not usable now. So storing them, is another thing. Do we have a way of storing them to keep them from?
I know, Mayor, I know that Joyce has started those conversations with folks at General Services, talking about the need to store them well, and maybe how to store those. And I believe that she's been satisfied with the response and support that she's received from the folks at General Services.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone. We have the approval of the letter of engagement for grant services for Carner Blue.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Carner Blue has previously served as a consultant to the Redevelopment Commission, providing grant services. Tina Rogers, who we worked closely with, had some personal things going on, and really, it was a tough time. Since then, things have settled, and Tina's really been able to re-engage, and we need her support and her assistance in these grant services, specifically related to a grant that we've received through the Lake Michigan Coastal Program, related to land acquisition and disposition, as it related to stormwater, the environment, and really kind of building off of what this commission understood when the North Side Development area was platted and developed, where we set aside certain properties for preservation, for stormwater management, for wildlife, and all of those things that really help us blend in with the national park that surrounds a lot of our developments and city infrastructure at the north end of our community. That idea then would extend south into the city, as we understand the other waterways we have in our community, the Salt Creek corridor, an area, as over the years, a number of properties have been acquired for the preservation of that corridor. In the Willow Creek corridor, Robbins Ditch, many of these other waterways that are so important to our community's infrastructure, but to identify a way to preserve them in a way that will protect those natural assets in the long term. And so I would recommend that because that grant is now moving forward, and Tina is familiar with that grant and can assist us in moving that forward, that we would retain the services of Cardinal Blue, Tina and her team. This letter agreement extends from possibly today through the end of 2023, which lines up with the delivery of the grant that we have with the Lake Michigan Coastal Program. Inside the agreement, you'll notice it's a not to exceed of $40,000. That has been budgeted in your budget. I would ask for your consideration in moving forward with this, and knowing that soon after this, we will be moving forward with that Lake Michigan Coastal Program grant, because now's the time to move forward with the project that I've talked about a little earlier in my presentation.
The only thing I would ask, AJ, is maybe Tina attends every once in a while to update us on what's going on, so that we kind of know where we're at with that.
Absolutely. I will ask her to do so. Thank you.
Dan, do you need to review the contract?
I'm going to, yes, so if you can make a contingent upon that, that'd be good.
Motion to approve upon Attorney Whitman's review of the contract.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion. So I'm seeing approval of amendment number 1 for Central Avenue project for American Structure Point.
Yes, first to the commission, thank you for allowing us the opportunity to revise the agenda so that we could take on these 2 additional matters this afternoon. The first is an amendment to the Central Avenue project. It's a contract that we hold with Structure Point. This takes into account additional work that was required to be performed by the engineer for the purposes of splitting up a set of plans that needed to be split up because of the obligation we had to spend federal funds in the given fiscal year. As I reported earlier when talking about the Central Avenue West project, that Phase 1A is set for bid in fall of this year, and you'll recall I mentioned a Phase 1B that will be let in fiscal year 24. There was some work that needed to go into that. Structure Point is seeking compensation for that effort. I believe the effort was there. I would make the recommendation that you approve this amendment, and noting that this is a federal aid project that is an 80-20 match, so we will be receiving a reimbursement for 80% of the services rendered by Structure Point. With us this afternoon is Mr. Chris Murphy with Structure Point. If you do have any specific questions about the amendment that is before you this afternoon.
So essentially, it's an increase of $163,700, right? Correct. With 80%.
Correct.
Attorney Whitman, do you need to review this amendment?
I have looked this over today, it's fine.
I'll make a motion to approve the amendment.
Second.
Greg, would you repeat the cost, please, so that that's in the record? I know it was 163.
So it's
Yep,
kind of there, it
and-
goes from 473,000 to 636,790. 472,090, 636,790.
Thank you, Attorney Whitten.
You're very welcome, which is a difference of 163,790. Not that I didn't think Greg could find it.
That's what
We
you're here for.
appreciate your assistance.
You're very welcome.
I will need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any further questions? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Chris. We have the approval of change order number 1 RTU at City Hall.
Yes, this change order is related to the rooftop unit that was placed by Bloomfield Mechanical. The change order is an increase to the contract in the amount of $1,540. The necessity of the change order was the need to use a larger crane to gain access to the roof. When the project was originally quoted, Bloomfield believed at the time that they had access to the roof on the west side of the building, somewhere between the bid and the project. Gary Up had completed removal and demolition work on the west side of the building related to the City Hall project. It would be staff's recommendation acknowledging that to approve the change order. It's an increased change order in the amount of $1,540.
Excuse me, question, is this the only change order we've had in this?
That is, yes.
Motion to approve the change order in the amount of $1,540.
Second.
We have motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Is there any other business to come before this commission at this time?
Do we need to talk about holidays, rate increase, or?
I believe we do need to talk about it, Attorney Whitten. I don't know if we're ready to talk about it today. I'm attempting to set up a meeting with Holiday to talk about that. And so Sonia's working to coordinate schedules and get some dates from them first so that then we can begin to coordinate schedules. We've been, so for the board, Attorney Whitten and I have been approached about Holiday wanting to revisit some of the terms of the current agreement that we have for property management services at 6100 Southport Road. There's a meeting that we need to have, and at some point we would be back to you with a recommendation for your consideration related to that.
Sounds good, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, there's no other business to come before the commission. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, AJ.
Thank you.
Thank you, commission members.